Hi everyone, I'm children's book author and illustrator Grace Lin. You might know me from my picture books like these, A Big Bed for Little Snow and A Big Mooncake for Little Star. Or you might know me from my early readers like these, Ling and Ting Not Exactly the Same and Ling and Ting Share a Birthday. But you probably know me from my middle grade novels like this, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon. And this one is probably my most popular book of all the books that I've authored and illustrated. Now, Where the Mountain Meets the Moon has two companion novels to it. It has this one, When the Sea Turned to Silver, which is kind of a sequel to the book, and it has this one, Starry River the Sky, which is kind of the prequel to it. And when I say kind of, that's because these books, they don't follow Min Lee's story so much. They are all books that kind of stand alone, so you don't have to have read Where the Mountain Meets the Moon to understand what's going on in these books, but there are characters in each of these books that kind of cross over. So if you do read all of them, you'll see how the stories connect. And what I'd like to do today is share with you a chapter from the prequel companion book, Starry River of the Sky. Now, this book is about a young boy named Rendy who is so angry with his father that he runs away from home. As the book opens, Rendy is a stowaway in a merchant's cart, but before the cart can take him further from home, he's discovered and he's left behind in the village of Clear Sky. Now, this village is not a great place for Rendy to be stuck in because the village used to have a mountain, but the mountain is now gone and the sun blazes down brutally all day. And the village used to have a moon at night, but the moon has gone missing, and all night the sky moans from missing it. Now, Rendy is really annoyed being stuck in a village where the sun and moon did not behave as they should, and he's just looking for another opportunity to keep running. When you first read Starry River of the Sky, you yourself might be really annoyed with Rendy because you want Rendy to be a hero, but he's not ready to be one yet. Until one day, a mysterious woman named Madame Chang comes to the village of Clear Sky, and she starts telling stories. Now, these stories are old, but could they mean something to Rendy? Could they mean something to the village? And most importantly, will these stories change Rendy into the hero we all want him to be? So what I'd like to do is share with you today Chapter 11 from Starry River of the Sky. Now, in this part of the book, Rendy is a chore boy at the inn he was abandoned at, and the innkeeper's daughter, Pei Yi, has just rescued a toad from Rendy's hands. And Madame Chang has already arrived, and she has already seen that Rendy is a very angry and unhappy person, and she wants to help him. Rendy looked down at his rice. He wasn't sure if he was more surprised that he was sitting at a dining table reserved for guests or that Madame Chang was smiling, because instead of being disgusted that a fat toad had landed next to her, Madame Chang had beamed as if greeting an old friend. Her welcome had included Rendy, who she had insisted sit with her, Mr. Shen, Pei Yi, and the toad for lunch. Master Chow had shrugged permission, Madame Chang's choice of a chore boy as a dining companion as perplexing to him as her choice of the toad. However, the toad's company seemed to be more appreciated than Rendy's. Pei Yi clapped her hands, and Mr. Shen had brightened and smiled at it. Looking more awake and alive than Rendy had ever seen him before, Mr. Shen had petted the toad and then reached into his pocket and took out 2 copper coins tied together with a red string. He rattled it in front of the toad like a toy in front of a baby. Instead of groaning painful sounds like the ones Rendy heard at night, the toad was now gurgling and giggling. "You're playing with a toad," Rendy said with a note of disgust. Pei Yi rolled her eyes. "It's more fun than you," she said. He began to respond with a rude insult, but suddenly the image of the cold, grim stone tablet came into Rendy's mind. He closed his mouth. "Rendy," Madame Chang said as he paused, "Pei Yi says that you haven't ever smiled since you've been here. Is that true?" Rendy shrugged. "Yesterday I noticed that you seemed to enjoy my story," Madame Chang said, Am I right?" Rendy nodded grudgingly. "It was interesting," he said. "Well, I want to make a deal with you," Madame Chung said. "If I can make you smile, no, if I can make you laugh with this next story, then for every story I tell, you must tell one of your own." "I don't know any stories," Rendy protested. "Oh, I'm sure you do," Madame Chung said, smiling at him in a teasing way. "You've just never shared them before, and I'll give you plenty of time to think of one. You can tell yours at dinner." "I want to hear a funny story," Pei Yi said. Mr. Shan nodded, and the toad croaked as if in agreement. Even Master Chow, standing at the back of the room, seemed to be looking at Rendy. Rendy shrugged again. "Does it have to be a good story?" he asked. "Any story you want," Madame Chung said. "We won't complain." "I will," Pei Yi said, but Madame Chung ignored her. "Is it a deal?" Madame Chung said, looking at Rendy. He hesitated. "Oh, Rendy," Pei Yi said, irritated. "You're not going to laugh anyway." "All right," Rendy said. "Why not?" he thought. Madame Chung smiled. Unexpectedly, she turned her head and looked at Master Chow. He had been pretending that their conversation was unworthy of his attention, but it was plain to see that he had been listening closely. He quickly looked away and pushed the beads on his abacus as if he were deep in calculation. Madame Chung's smile grew larger, and then she began the story. And this is the story of the old sage. Once there was an old man who lived on a mountaintop. Some thought he was a crazy old man. Some thought he was the mountain spirit, or even an immortal, but most believed he was a sage of great wisdom. Many sought him, some for answers, some for advice, and some to be his students. The old man answered all the questions and solved all the problems, but he shooed away all the hopeful students. However, one student named Tiwu refused to give up. He returned over and over again, begging and pleading, until the sage finally agreed to teach him. Tiwu was an eager pupil. At the sun's light, the sage would share the old stories and teachings, and they would spend the rest of the day in deep contemplation. But at night, when the moon climbed into the sky, the old man ignored his student and instead read to himself from a large book. Tiwu wondered about this. It was obvious to him that there was great wisdom in the book and that only the sage read. What special knowledge was in it? He yearned to know, but the sage never offered him even a glance at one of the pages. However, Tiwu was a reasonable fellow. "He will allow me to read the book," he thought, "when I have mastered everything else he has taught me." So he set his mind on his lessons, learning in earnest. And with such effort, his progress was quite considerable. Soon, when people came to the old sage for answers, Tiwu was able to give them. Before long, Tiwu also began to gain the reputation of being a wise man. Encouraged by this, Tiwu finally gathered the courage to ask the sage about the book. One night, as the old man read silently, Tiwu asked, "Master, what are you reading in that book?" "The page I am reading right now," the old man said, without looking up, "is about the secret to attaining peace." The secret to peace! Tiwu was in awe. Only the wisest and greatest of sages would know that. The book was full of wonderful secrets. What other extraordinary answers were in that book? "Master," Tiwu said, "may I read the secret to peace too?" The old man looked at him. "Do you really wish to know the secret to peace?" he said. "Or do you simply wish to read the Book of Fortune?" Tiwu thought carefully and then said honestly, "Both." The sage said nothing, stroking his beard in thought. Tiwu could sense his doubt. Finally the sage said, "Do you really believe you are ready?" "Yes," Tiwu said confidently. In his mind, the only thing that kept him and the sage from being equals was the knowledge in the book. "I am not sure," the old man said. "I am," Tiwu said. "Please, how can I prove it to you?" The sage sat thoughtfully for a moment and then said, "At the bottom of this mountain, you will see a tall tree overlooking a lake. Climb the tree to the highest branch and sit there in contemplation for 99 days and nights. If you are able to do that, you may read the Book of Fortune, and the secret to achieving peace. Immediately, Tiwu traveled down the mountain, and he found the tall tree overlooking the lake. The tree was smooth and straight like a giant paintbrush, and seemed almost as tall as the mountain he had just left. With great difficulty, Tiwu wrapped a rope around the trunk of the tree and made his way up to the highest branch. At the top, he sat in complete confidence. He was sure he could meet his master's requirements and return to learn the great secret. The sun rose and dropped, the moon filled and emptied, and Tiwu watched it all from the top of the tree. Nearby villagers, finding it easier to call up questions to someone in a tree than to climb a mountain, sent him baskets of food, which he hauled up using his rope. Soon, he began to bestow answers and advice to a steady stream of followers. On the 96th night, there was a terrible storm. The wind shrieked and screamed, and the thunder's roars echoed for miles away. Lightning slashed the sky, and rain attacked like vicious arrows. The tree swayed and bent, but Tiwu, remembering his master's teachings, did not panic. Even as nearby branches cracked and fell, and rain and wind slapped his face raw, he sat silently like a stone statue. The next morning, everyone crowded around the tree to see Tiwu sitting calmly up in the branches. "He is, without a doubt, a great sage," they said to one another. "Only one who has achieved great enlightenment could be unmoved by that storm." And they hailed and honored him from the ground. Tiwu heard their praises and felt quite satisfied. "I have truly proven myself," he thought, and he wrote a poem. "Like a mountain of stone, the most powerful wind, the most thunderous noise cannot move me. Steadfast my mind, deliverance my gain." This he decided to send to his master, the old man on the mountain. One of Tiwu's admirers quickly brought it to the sage. The old man read the poem and smiled. Then he flipped the paper over and wrote in dark characters, "Burp," and sent it back to Tiwu. Tiwu quickly read the reply, expecting praise from his teacher. When he saw what his master had scrawled on the page instead, Tiwu was very insulted. "Burp," he said indignantly. "I speak of sacrifice and great knowledge, and he returns this? What does he mean?" Offended, Tiwu rushed down the tree and up the mountain. With every step, he felt more resentful of his master's response. So when he finally saw the old sage sitting calmly, Tiwu immediately began to berate him. "What is this?" Tiwu said, waving the message angrily. "Burp? What do you mean?" The old man waited until Tiwu paused for breath. "You said the most powerful wind and the loudest noise could not move you," the sage said with a smile. "But it took only one burp to bring you here." With those words, Madame Chang finished the story and looked at Rendi. His mouth had curved, and a noise snorted out of his nose. It was only when the sound joined everyone else's that he realized he was laughing. So that was Chapter 11 of Starry River of the Sky. I hope you liked it, and I hope you read the rest of the book. For my next video, I'm going to teach viewers how to draw a Chinese prosperity toad, because in Chinese culture, the toad is supposed to bring you wealth. So we'll be drawing that in my next video. And that just leaves me with one more thing to say. I wanted to remind you about my podcast, Kids Ask Authors. It's a podcast where a guest author and I answer one kid question, and each episode ends with a kid book review, a kid poem, or a kid joke. So you can send your own poem, your own joke, or your own book review into the podcast and we'll play it. So please submit those things, and I hope to hear from you. Bye!